a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Coffee can be grown in Texas, but mostly in the southern regions or right along the coast. There's not a lot of commercial coffee coming from here because it's too hot and too dry. That's why Organic Man Coffee Trike buys from all over the world, but not from Texas. The best coffee in the universe can be yours by driving over, or walking, or maybe riding your bike, which I've done. Anyway, going to the Organic Man Coffee Trike and getting some. Oh, yes, the best coffee in the world, in the universe, can be yours by going to 4501 McPherson here in Laredo. Or, for the rest of y'all, you can go to organicmancoffeetrike.shop. Your taste buds will thank you. The other day, I saw a little girl in an odd kind of dress, something from the 1800s. She was walking by my house, looking towards the windows. As she vanished from sight, I got to thinking maybe that was Annabelle Lee, out looking for a new podcast to work on. Trailer Trash Terrors has been off the air for 4 months now. I guess the creepy little girl is looking for a new home. Either that or Trailer Trash Terrors is going to have to do some shows here quick. I'm running out of things to listen to. Give me a home where the buffalo roam. Well, that would be in Africa. We don't have buffalo in the U.S. We do have bison. A bison and buffalo belong to different genera within the Bovidia family. I hate these names from the scientific crowd. North American and European bison, or wison, belong to the genus bison. True buffalo, including the African Cape and the Asian water buffalo, which belong to an entirely different genera. Genetically, bison are more closely related to cattle than to true buffalo. This taxonomic distinction is important because it highlights that despite physical similarities, that these animals evolved separately and developed different adaptations to their respective environments. The misnomer in North America, where bison are commonly called buffalo, dates back to early European settlers who saw a resemblance between bison and the buffalo that they knew from the old world. And this is right up there with turkeys, the birds, not the people. Oh, I must say, I put my Art Bell coffee cup back on the shelf. Every time the cats looked at it, I got paranoid that they were going to cause a dastardly deed. I really like that cup. I have it sitting on the shelf where anybody in the kitchen will see it. There was a time when bison covered the prairie landscape of the American West. The herds that roamed that area were upwards in the numbers of 30 to 60 million at their peak. They were so plentiful that early Spanish explorers said they were like the fish in the sea. Bison were a keystone species in the prairie ecosystem, which means that they played a pivotal role in the healthy function of the Great Plains. Their migration and grazing allowed the fauna and the flora to flourish by reducing dead vegetation and allowing for new growth. They also helped fertilize the area by all that poo that they'd gotten from eating grass. This in turn allowed other species to find the food that they needed to thrive. Bison were such a central part of the culture of the Indians of the Texas prairies, they were incorporated into their myths and legends. After the Civil War, settlers began to push westward in greater numbers. Bison became a target. Bison were a source of food for these settlers, but more significantly, they were a tool to be used against the Indians. Bison were so vital to their diet that if they cleared the land of these animals, they would clear the land of the Indians. Thus began what is known as the Great Slaughter. The U.S. military sent west to ready the frontier for expansion. They were commanded by General Sherman and Sheridan. If you know your history, you'll recognize those two names. This was the same Sherman who used cruel measures against the South during the Civil War. He used what was called scorched earth, and he literally burned and destroyed everything in his path, whether it was military, civilian, or natural. He would advocate for the scorched earth policy when it came to the Indians as well. In a letter from Sherman to Sheridan, 1868, Sherman observed that as long as the bison roamed the plains, the U.S. military and the settlers would come into conflict with the Indians. He said, I think it would be wise to invite all sportsmen of England and America there this fall for a grand buffalo. Yes, he was confused as to what these animals were. A buffalo hunt. Sherman wrote, and make one grand sweep of them all. Beside the ambitions of the manifest destiny, there was a financial incentive to the hunt. Around 1870, a bison hide could fetch around $3.50. That was nearly $80 in today's money. It was relatively easy to stalk and hunt. They could be taken with a round of ammunition that cost 25 cents, which would be about $6 today. Within months, the race was on. Urged on by an economic depression of the 1873 that saw many more people heading west looking for an easy way to make a buck. Thousands of bison hunters arrived, most able to kill as many as 50 animals in a day. Trains passing through the prairies would have men hanging out of the windows with rifles shooting at the herds as they passed. So many bison were killed that the market for their hides dropped. Unfortunately, that did not stop the killing. Bison were shot and left to rot on the ground. Where the sight of a bison herd once symbolized the open frontier, now it was the bison's skull that symbolized the area. Soon, by 1888, it was estimated there were as few as 1,000 bison remaining in North America. The sheer scale of killing eventually pricked the moral conscience of some Americans. 1875, Congress passed a bill attempting to protect the bison, but President Grant refused to sign it. A few Western ranchers took pity on the calves that they'd seen. Among them were Charles and Mary Ann Goodnight. In 1878, uh, the Goodnights began herding some orphan calves, and they let them roam on their land. These calves would become the core of the Goodnight herd, and within a few years they grew to about 200. Mary Ann Goodnight could not have known the full scale of her service to the conservation when she urged her husband to do something with these poor animals. The Goodnights were one of 5 ranchers who protected small herds of bison. Today, those 5 herds make up the foundation stock of all of the bison in North America. Without them, the American bison would have vanished from the earth. The Goodnights' conservation efforts were largely forgotten for about 100 years. Then, in the 20th century, wildlife conservationists Wolfgang Fry learned about the bison that still roamed on the J.A. Ranch, and he asked the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to study these animals. They learned through genetic testing that the bison, descendants of the Goodnight herd, were perhaps the last remaining southern plains bison. Bison were made to conserve, bison plans were made to conserve the species and ensure their survival. The J.A. Ranch donated the herd to the Texas Parks and Wildlife, which moved them to Caprock Canyon State Park in 1997. The preserved prairies of Caprock Canyon allowed the herds to return to some of the last remaining untouched acreage of habitat that their ancestors once roamed across for thousands of years. My tongue is fighting with the roof of my mouth for some reason. Today, the Caprock Canyon bison herd plays an important role in the ongoing conservation of American bison. The goal of the state's bison conservation is to reestablish the animals as the keystone species within the Texas prairie ecosystem. Park visitors can encounter these large, majestic creatures that once teetered on the brink of extinction, but are now celebrated as a central part of the history and the heritage of the West. If you're going to look at these big animals, do not pet the fluffy cows. Bison will stand there and let you walk right up to them and suddenly turn, and you're going to find yourself hanging from one of their horns. This is right up there with folks wanting to have their photos taken with any wild animals, bears especially. Some people are just too crazy, uninformed to actually be allowed out on their own. Don't pet the fluffy cows, or you're going to wind up on the 6 o'clock news, and people are not going to feel sorry for you. Don't do it. Just because bison do not have a warning label stuck to their tails doesn't mean they're not dangerous. I think these warning labels have gotten a little out of hand. The ghost bison is a rare albino that is considered a sacred and spiritual animal by many Indian tribes. Feather, not dot. It is believed that the ghost bison is a messenger between the living and the dead. There was a ghost bison spotted in Yellowstone. I believe it was this year. Visitors to the park reported sightings of this rare creature, which is said to bring good luck and fortune to anyone that sees it. The white bison calf is said to be 1 in 10 million occurrence. It was spotted in Lamar Valley area of the park. It's located in the northwest corner. Being an all white animal and a herd of dark elders has given this calf the name spirit bison or ghost bison. White bison are seen as sacred by several Native American tribes. However, some believe that they might be a symbol of evil, according to the Ozark Valley Bison Farms in Arkansas. Did you see the 1977 movie, The White Buffalo? Wild Bill Hickok, played by Charles Bronson, is haunted by his dreams of a giant white buffalo. So he travels the west looking for this beast. Along the way, Hickok meets the great Lakota warrior Crazy Horse, played by Will Sampson, who is also searching the plains for this giant white buffalo because it had killed his daughter. Hickok and Crazy Horse team up to kill this elusive beast. It's quite a movie. The rare color could be a result of albinoism, a genetic condition in which animals lack pigmentation, or it could be from leucemia, leucism. Darn those scientists. Leucism, in which an animal has some pigmentation but is still white. The legend of the white buffalo calf woman, the Indians didn't call them buffalo. They called them Tatanka or Inawa. But that is too hard for me to say, so I'll go with buffalo. She tells how the people had lost their ability to communicate with the Creator Spirit. The Creator sent the sacred white calf woman to teach the people how to pray with the pipe. With the pipe, there were 7 sacred ceremonies given for the people to abide to ensure a future of harmony, peace, and balance. White Calf Woman told the people she would again return for the sacred bundle that she had left with them. Eventually, the Indians, who have picked up on what the white men called these creatures, so yes, they would have called them buffalo instead of bison or Tatanka. A lot of Indians were forced to no longer use their own language. With the return of the white buffalo, it is a sign that prayers are being heard, that the sacred pipe is being honored, and that the promise of prophecies are being fulfilled. White buffalo signals a time of abundance and plenty, kind of like making America great again, maybe. The black dog of Hanging Rock is a legend here in the Texas Hill Country. I tried to find out a lot more about the black dog, but I was bombarded by accounts of the black dog of Hanging Hills in Connecticut. No matter what I typed, I was redirected to Connecticut because the search engines know far better what I'm looking for than I do. After spending several hours, I just decided to go with what few things I could find. The Black Dog of Hanging Rock is a famous legend, but few have heard of it outside of our state. This creature is said to have haunted the area around Hanging Rock, which is a natural rock formation located in the Texas Hill Country. According to legend, the black dog is a large black canine with glowing red eyes that appears at night and terrorizes travelers, hunters, and anybody in the area. The creature is said to be a ghost of a dog that was possibly killed by a group of hunters many years ago. In British folklore, the black dog is a supernatural entity that often associated with death and the devil. It is believed the black dog is a guardian of the underworld and that it appears to warn people of impending danger. According to legend, the black dog is seen as a large spectral hound with glowing red eyes and shaggy fur. It is said to roam the countryside, especially at night, and is often associated with crossroads, graveyards, and other places of death and transformation. One of the most famous British dogs is the black shuck. It is believed that those who see black shuck will die within a year. The Texas black dog has all the earmarks of being the same kind of creature, or close enough to it, as the British legends. I could find very little about it, and what I could find was somewhat redundant. The Enchanted Rock is a huge red granite dome in southwest Llano County, about 20 miles north of Fredericksburg, and has long been the center of various legends. The local Comanche and Tonkawa Indians both feared and revered the rock and were said to offer sacrifices at its base. One Indian tradition holds that a band of warriors defended themselves on the rock from attacks of other Indians. The warriors, however, were finally overcome and killed. Since then, Enchanted Rock has been haunted by their ghosts. Another legend tells of an Indian princess who threw herself off of the rock when she saw that her people were being slaughtered by enemy Indians. Now her spirit is said to haunt the rock as well. Another tale is of a spirit of an Indian chief who was doomed to walk the summit forever as punishment for sacrificing his daughter. The indentations on the rock summit are his footsteps, his footprints. I've seen them, and they look just like footprints going around the face of the rock. They cross the summit trail, and they're somewhat hard to miss. You'll see people standing there staring at them, wondering how the heck could any footprints be formed into solid granite? Yet, there they are. There's a story of a white woman who was kidnapped by Indians but escaped and lived on Enchanted Rock, where her screams were said to be audible at night. The Indian legends of the haunting of Enchanted Rock are bolstered by the way the rock glitters on a clear night, especially after it rains, and by the creaking noises that you'll hear as the rock cools after a warm day. If you stand at the base of the rock, you'll hear all kinds of strange sounds. There's a story of Spanish explorers who believed that there was a huge deposit of silver underneath the rock. They also dug gold mines nearby. Some early Texans believed that the lost Bowie mines were in the vicinity west of Enchanted Rock. Some gold has been mined near the rock, but there's not enough there to make it commercially profitable. One of the most endearing and romantic stories involving Enchanted Rock is that a young Spanish soldier, Don Jesus Navarro, and his rescue of the Indian maiden, Rosa. Navarro supposedly came from Monterrey to San Jose y Miguel de Argoyo Mission in San Antonio. Why do they have to have such long names? He arrived in 1750. At the mission, he met and fell in love with Rosa, the Christian daughter of the Indian chief Tijuan. Rosa was kidnapped by a band of Comanches bent on sacrificing her to the spirits of the enchanted rock. Her daring lover followed them and managed to rescue her as she was about to be burned at the stake. Comanches did set folks on fire, but I couldn't find anything that involved human sacrifice. The people being torched were usually prisoners. This is how things were done back then. No human sacrifices, but lots of burning at the stake. 1831, the Texas Rangers, under the command of Captain John Coffee Hayes, were surveying the area. John Coffee, but spelled different. Now, what was it he said? Coffee, like the drink, only spelled different. Well, his last name was Hayes, but I like his middle name better. Well, he was off on his own one day when he encountered some not so friendly Comanches who turned a hostile eye towards this white devil. Coffee fled towards Enchanted Rock and he clomb the trail to the summit, where he took cover and proceeded to hold off the locals for 3 hours. The Comanches decided that this was getting them nowhere and they left. On one of our many visits to the rock, we had a psychic with us. She said there was an old Indian sitting by the entry to the rock summit trail. He told her that he was there to watch the trail. A few words of warning if you want to try your luck at climbing Enchanted Rock. The trail is steep, and you have to have some good hiking shoes or boots. There's no water anywhere along the trail, so you'd best bring your own and lots of it. It gets hot up on top. After all, you're closer to the sun. There's hardly anywhere to get shade from the sun once you get up there other than the cave. Don't go in unless you are not claustrophobic. It is very tight. If you stay until sunset, which is spectacular, it gets dark. Very dark. You are going to need a flashlight or two to find your way back down. There are no lights on the rock. On another visit, me and my wife had gotten to the top of the rock, and we sat there and we watched the sunset, which, like I said, is spectacular. Some little kid a ways from us yelled, "Do it again!" which I don't think was going to happen for about another 24 hours. Once it was over, I pulled a couple of flashlights out of my camelback, one for each of us. I also put my headlight on and we started down the trail. As we're walking along, I just said to my wife, I wonder if there are any rattlesnakes on the rock. Before my wife could answer, we heard the buzzing sound, followed by a scream. I checked to be sure my wife was in a safe spot, and then I ran back up a few yards to where this pair of women were. One of them was laying on her back on the ground. Uh, they had been startled by a snake, and one of them tripped, trying to back up in the dark. She was trying to avoid the sharp end. I checked her over, and there were no fang marks. I handed them one of my flashlights, and I told them they could keep it. It was just a cheap plastic light, and then I proceeded back down to where my wife was. Yes, there are bitey snakes on the rock, so watch out for them. This is their home, so you'd best be a good guest. We use walking sticks to probe the shadows. A snake will usually move away from you unless it is startled or cornered. Just listen for the buzz. You just have to move a few feet further away. Rattlesnakes can only strike about maybe 2 or 3 feet, and that's it. A mysterious creature was caught on a trail camera in the Rio Grande Valley. Photographs showed a mammal like creature against a backdrop of trees, and it was at night. The folks at Texas Parks and Wildlife had no idea what this creature was. The photo was given to the department by a park visitor, and the exact location where it was taken in the Rio Grande Valley was unclear, meaning that the park officials could not go to the area and look for any tracks or possibly the creature itself. A few people have said that this is nothing more than a badger. Badger, 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 badger. A snake, a snake. I hope some of y'all know what that was. Mushroom, mushroom. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just simply go to YouTube and type in badger, 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 and sit back and enjoy. You can send it to anybody you want to annoy the heck out of. I looked at the image of the creature, and it did kind of look a bit like a badger, but the markings weren't there. The animal is all pretty much one color. I'm no animal expert, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Another social media user suggested that it was a capybara, a large rodent that does walk on all fours, while others said that this was a cross between badger and something else. One poster said it was maybe a possum and a raccoon combined. I don't know of possums and raccoons ever mating, but that would be an interesting looking creature. Did you know that if you have possums living in your yard, you won't have any ticks? Possums eat ticks. They also are very, very rarely carrying rabies. Now, they will act like they're sick. They'll let drool run from their mouths and saliva and spit and blow bubbles, and they look crazy. They look like they've got rabies. That's just an act. It's to make people stay away from them. But that's possums for you. Possums are cool. A possum wearing a fez would be really cool. No, I'm not wearing my fez today, but it's right there. The Tatzelwurm is a legendary creature that has been a part of the alpine folklore for centuries. It is often described as a lizard like creature with a serpent like body and the head of a cat. The creature is said to have either fur or scales, depending on who you listen to. They sometimes have 4 legs and usually just 2 with claws, just like a cat. Like a cat. The tatzelworm is also known as the stolen worm or the stoleworm in some areas. According to the legends, the tatzelworm is a nocturnal creature that lives in the mountainous areas and preys on other animals. It is said to be solitary and it avoids humans. The tatzelworm is also known for its powerful clawed forelimbs that gives it an extremely feline appearance. The creature's origins are shrouded in mystery, but some believe that it is a real-life creature. Some accounts describe it as being up to 7 feet long, with a cylindrical body and a wide head. Its eyes are huge and it is supposed to somewhat resemble a cat. The body is often described as being covered in fine scales or fur, depending, like I said. Despite its appearance, the tatzelworm is not known to be aggressive towards humans. It is said to be a shy creature that avoids us people Probably because it knows what will probably happen. Bang, and then it'll be stuffed and put on display somewhere. The Texas Tatzelwurm is a cryptid reportedly sighted in the state's western area near the Davis Mountains. This creature is described as a lizard-like critter with long coiled body and a very fierce reputation. While sightings of the Texas Tatzelwurm are rare, locals and tourists do continue searching for evidence of its existence. And now for something completely different. Well, something to think about. House cats have those weird snake like eyeballs. They get really thin when in bright light. Other cats, tigers, jaguar, lions, they have round eyes that when they constrict in the light, they continue to be round. House cats and snakes have those slit pupils. Cats also have long, slinky bodies, unless they live in a house with a crazy cat lady, in which case they're round and lumpy. Why is the house cat the only one with eyes like a snake? Could this have something to do with the Tatzelworm, maybe? Odessa is out in West Texas, not to be mistaken for the town of West Texas, which is 20 miles north of Waco. So you've got West Texas, the town, and West Texas, the area. The Odessa meteor crater is an impact area 550 feet across, which is located southwest of the city. There's about 120,000 people living in Odessa. The guy that went to basic training with me was from Odessa. Coach. Coach Hennigan. I wonder if he's still out there. He was 30 when we went to basic training. The local emergency medical service has had an unusual set of patients. Over about a 1.5 year period, 6 people were treated for bites, mostly to the legs, but a few also to the arms. What makes these bites so unusual is the victims all said they were attacked by a creature with flaming teeth. Anytime a patient has an unbelievable account for their injuries, a blood sample is taken and checked for any kind of illicit drugs, medications, or excessive alcohol. 4 of the 6 did test positive for very minor traces of different substances. It did not explain their injuries. The marks left by the incisors, that's the front, top, and the bottom teeth, uh, were very long, 4 to 6 inches long. A coyote does have some long canines, but not the incisors. The teeth marks did not match with any known animals from the area or from the planet as far as they knew. All of these wounds had been cauterized as if touched by some extreme heat. Considering the accounts of flaming teeth, the whole incident falls outside anything science can explain. All the patients had been treated and questioned by different EMTs and doctors. Flaming Teeth was a giant who ate men on the Fiji archipelago. He was so large that his teeth were full-sized wooden logs that were always burning. He was the first person on Fiji to cook his food, which he did while chewing. This is the only other story I could find with anything to do with flaming teeth. I've tried finding anything more about the injuries, but it's not the kind of thing that most medics will talk to people they don't know about. And no, the hospitals don't want to talk to me either. The crocotta is a globally distributed mythical dog wolf originating in India and Ethiopia. The crocota has the body of an extremely large dog, sometimes as big as a mule or a small horse. Its head resembles that of a hyena, and it has cloven hooves, a horse-like mane, and a tail like a lion. Its fur ranges in color from orange yellow to brownish black, and it can include spots or stripes resembling a hyena or a tiger. It is sometimes depicted without teeth, but with bones, kind of like an elephant's jawbone inside an elephant's mouth, that is used to crush its prey. The Kokota has the ability to mimic human speech, and it uses this power to lure its victims to it, usually by pretending to be somebody in trouble. The creature often uses a voice that the victim recognizes and sometimes calls the victims by name, or they'll include other personal information in its cry for help. This ability is mentioned in a lot of cryptid cases. The Lechuza, doppelgangers, skinwalkers, changelings all have the ability to mimic human voices, and they use this to lure folks into their trap. One of the most common is the sound of a baby crying. As the would be rescuer follows the cry for help, it keeps moving farther away. This happened to us one night down by El Cenizo. Very cold night. One of the aliens that we caught said that she had heard a woman crying in the river just south of where we were at. We loaded the aliens up into a van, and then we went looking for this woman in distress. Now, surprisingly, in our group, there's about six of us. Only one person would hear the crying at a time. And they would always say, "Oh, it's just a little farther down the river." We would move a little farther down the river. Another member of our group would hear the crying. They would say, "Yes, it's just a little farther. It's just a little farther." Finally, we decided we're not going to do this anymore. We turned around. It took us over 30 minutes to walk back to our vehicles. A woman crying in the river. Was it La Lechuza or something else? La Llorona, maybe? Don't know. The crocota has no unusual powers other than its ability to sound like a person that you know. It's easy to kill. You can use any kind of a weapon on it. It's not bulletproof. You don't need silver bullets, but it is a very big dog and it can mimic voices. Several years ago, I was listening to Expanded Perspectives with Cam Hale and Kyle Filson. They were talking about one of their listeners who had seen what he said was a hyena while hunting on a ranch south of Laredo. I got a hold of Kyle and I asked him who this person was, and he tried searching their emails, but he couldn't find the guy's contact information. I get a few emails about the show. Those two get thousands a week, so they couldn't find the info. Just a while ago, Cam and Kyle were on Ducks Unlimited, and they were talking about a hunter who had seen a weird white creature, kind of like a pale crawler, sneaking about in the area that he was hunting. The hunter decided it was best to get the heck out of there, and as he was leaving, he heard the sound of a woman calling for help. He looked back, and the sound was coming from the crawler. A hill country village woman spotted something she's never seen before in her backyard. She says that it looked like a hyena and a small mountain lion. Hill Country Village is just south of San Antonio. Tina Collig said she's seen coyotes, foxes, and raccoons in her yard. What she saw was a brown creature that looked like a mix between a hyena and a mountain lion. Now, I hear it all the time from experts. Certain animals cannot mate, therefore, all sightings are either hoaxes or made by idiots. Lions and hyenas cannot mix. Just because it looks like a cross between a mountain lion and a hyena does not mean that that is what it is. That is what it looks like. Just like how the scientists keep saying that lizards and humans cannot mate. Therefore, all those sightings of lizard men cannot be true. Lizard men are not the sons or the daughters of a night of too much drinking. No, they look like a cross between a lizard and a man, but that doesn't mean that that's what they are. Some of the boys in the white lab coats will go to any lengths to deny the existence of any creatures that are not listed on their acceptable creatures list. They also have an acceptable scientific research list and a list of laughing points to be used against anyone that says otherwise. There is a list of forbidden subjects, which includes just about everything. 1901. Ramey Arland was living in Marble Falls, which is west of Austin. One evening, her mother sent the girl out to gather the family sheep, which were grazing nearby. As her mother went about the normal duties of a housewife, which was just about everything else, she heard Ramey scream. Fearing for her daughter's life, the woman raced out the door. She heard more screaming, with the sounds of a mountain lion mixed in. Thinking Ramey had encountered a mountain lion attacking her sheep, the mother dashed back into the house, grabbed a gun, and charged to the rescue. Never get between a mother and her kid, no matter what the species. She searched the area, but she could find no sign of her daughter. The mother went back to round up a posse. Folks combed the woods throughout the night, but they found no sign of Ramey, not even a single drop of blood or any of her clothing. No sign whatsoever. The day after her disappearance, a searcher came upon a young, disheveled girl who was aimlessly wandering through the woods. It was Ramey. The hunter helped her home, where her relieved mother was waiting. Ramey recovered from her ordeal, and she told everybody about her encounter with the Bear King. Ramey was tending the sheep and making her way along a trail when a large black bear suddenly appeared in front of her. This bear wanted nothing to do with the girl, and it sprinted away. Then a curious-looking animal running on all fours sprang out of the chaparral onto the trail. This was no bear. Ramey thought it looked somewhat human. She remembered a Kickapoo legend about the Bear King. This creature grabbed the girl, glared into her eyes, and let go with a horrid yell. Sounded just like a mountain lion. Ramey thought this creature was about to tear her to pieces, but instead it threw her over one shoulder and raced away into the hills, running on two legs. The creature carried Raimi for miles until it reached its lair, a nasty, horrible smelling cave tucked away where few people would ever find it. Raimi believed this was it. We're all gonna die. When the Bear King tossed her into the corner on the ground, she leaped to her feet and raced towards the entrance. However, the Bear King whacked her over the head, knocking her unconscious. When she came to, the Bear King was curled up asleep. She very carefully, very quietly crept along the cave floor, managed to get past the Bear King, and made good her escape. A group of hunters headed out towards the hills after hearing the young girl's story. They were intent on killing this beast. They found the Bear King, and they confronted it. The creature stood up to the hunters, snapping and grinding its teeth while beating its chest. That doesn't sound like any bear I've ever seen. They opened fire, and down went the Bear King. What was now laying at their feet looked half human, half bear, an animal unknown to them or anyone they knew. Some cryptozoologists speculate that it may have been a Bigfoot. We'll probably never know for sure because, well, that was a long time ago. There is a Kickapoo legend, but the tribe was not known to have lived in the Marble Falls area. The Kickapoo did travel through Texas on their migration from the Midwest into Mexico. It is possible that they perhaps had run into this creature while passing through the area, and then they continued to talk about this thing, passing it down from generation to generation. They seem to have avoided this particular area, perhaps because of stories of the creature. The Horizon City monster sounds a lot like a Bigfoot encounter as well. There are few trees and no place to hide a huge hair covered beast in that neck of the woods, which there's no woods. Horizon City is in El Paso County. There are stories about a huge, hairy creature that roams the desert to the east of town. Cecilia Montañez had a sighting in 2001. Montañez is a retired secretary, and she moved to Horizon City from El Paso. She has seen the creature known locally as the Horizon City Monster on two separate occasions. The first was when she was still living in town. She was driving along the highway when she spotted a hairy figure crouching over a dead coyote on the side of the road. As she got closer to the entity, she was somewhat surprised when it stood up on its hind legs. Well, it stood up on two legs. She swears the creature was initially taller than the mound behind it. It began walking up the mound, and then when it got to the top, it began to go lower into the ground with each step, as if going down a subterranean trail of some kind. It eventually vanished below the mound. Montañez didn't actually see it disappear into the ground, but she is sure that that's what has happened. There must have been a cave entrance somewhere. She left the scene before deciding to investigate, so she came back the next day and looked around. She saw that the coyote's body was gone, and she did not see any footprints, but like I said, it was the next day, and the wind does blow a lot. Montañez remembered there had been an old newspaper article that she had seen from 1975 edition of the El Paso Times, which talked about a group of teenagers who had witnessed a gorilla-like creature near Horizon City Golf Course. Bill Rutherford was a deputy sheriff at the time, and he recalled investigating the incident. He eventually became the Horizon City's first police chief in 1988, and he later retired after 10 years. Horizon City Police Chief Tony Aguilar was the town's chief in 2003 when the article was written. He said he had never received any reports involving Bigfoot like creatures, but he had recorded some reports of meteorites landing in the desert. Meteorites or UFOs. Montañez said the creature must live in an extensive cave system beneath the city. But Phil Goodell, a geology professor at the University of Texas in El Paso, said that the ground there is the wrong kind for caves to have formed. Montañez was able to talk to an unnamed law enforcement official who had investigated the creature, and he had developed a bit of a profile. She said the officer had told her the creature had glowing red eyes, like a cat, and that they were naturally herbivorous, but had been forced to exsanguinate small animals and eat their organs due to a lack of vegetation in the area. Montañez said that her daughter did not believe a word of this story until she saw it as well. Local witnesses says that this monster in question is 7 to 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and an elongated head. Montañez added that the entities have very short hair and are a faded brownish maroon color. Their mouths resemble more like a bulldog. Other witnesses has attested to the creature can be seen late at night around Lake El Paso area. Others say that they have heard the creature emitting humming sounds when they're driving through East Lake Boulevard, and they can tell when the monster is near because of the horrible smell. In the summer 2021, the cast of El Paso's Viva Media Group were preparing for a performance in the McKelligan Amphitheater up in Franklin Mountains. It was a group of about 30 to 35 actors. They began rehearsing 2 days before the big event. While some cast members were in the changing rooms, the rest were on stage going through their roles. At about 7 p.m., they heard the sound of a huge creature screaming at the top of its lungs. The howling got everyone's attention as it went on several times, when then was followed by other screams nearby. There was no way that this was any mountain lion. It was just way too loud. To make matters worse, the sound was being buffeted along the canyon walls around them. The cast members kind of freaked out, not sure if they should run or not. One of the members decided to look into the sounds only after it was no longer being howled. They found several news accounts of people with similar stories, both sounds and sightings. This creature is said to look like an atypical Bigfoot. The beast of Bear Creek sounds an awful lot like a werewolf. Texas and Louisiana have quite a tradition of werewolves and other shape-shifting creatures. Older residents of the Texas Hill Country are familiar with the story of the beast of Bear Creek. It is widely believed among the early settlers of Kimball County that an old Indian shaman, he was the last survivor of his tribe, had the ability to change from a normal human into that of a large wolf. The old medicine man is said that he was seeking revenge on the white men who had devastated his tribe, so he would transform into his wolf persona, roaming the countryside at night, killing everything from livestock to settlers who were caught out in the dark. Tales of the shapeshifter and skinwalker permeated the folklore of many Indian tribes. But what makes this particular example unusual is that many of the white settlers of Kimball County, in particular those near the town of Clio, believe that these stories are true. So much so that the image of the beast of Bear Creek, uh, a monster well known in the area, was immortalized by being carved into the rock wall. N.Q. Patterson lived in Kimball County during the time that the beast of Bear Creek was running around the countryside. He was a man of many talents. One time he had served as the county treasurer, a judge, and a tombstone carver. He was a stone cutter and a sculptor for which he is remembered to this day. Patterson was unable to satisfy his artistic bent by carving tombstones, so he took to carving figures into the limestone cliffs and the bluffs around Bear Creek. Of the many images created by Patterson, one in particular is quite well known. It is called the Clio face. Due to its proximity to the small town, the large carving depicts a strange, fierce creature. The figure looks to be human and animal at the same time. The nose is broad and protrudes more like a muzzle. The lips of the creature are curled back in a vicious snarl, revealing its fangs. The carving was quite large and became very well known in the region. Many came to the conclusion that this was a representation of the old shaman in his wolf guise, the beast of Bear Creek. No one knows for sure if Patterson has actually seen the monster himself or if he had simply carved it based on the sightings of others. Now, a lot of folks are wanting to go looking, even if they don't believe a word of any of these stories. The funny thing is, as it gets dark and their cars get farther away, suddenly every little sound in the woods is probably a cryptid. Maybe this is the whole thing about watching horror movies. You get that heart pounding sensation and a super wild thrill, and then you can walk away from it. Or maybe not. You might want a few stories to tell later on, but you don't want any souvenirs. To begin with, we have a lot of biting things that like to hang out in the woods. We also have lots of ticks. If you walk around outside, check yourself. Check yourself carefully. That includes places that you can't see. You're looking for small bumps that weren't there earlier. Ticks are literally blood-sucking fiends. Okay, they don't actually suck blood, they lap it up, but they still drink your blood. I believe we have Plum Island to thank for Lyme disease, which is what you get from tick bites. Never ever go wandering around in the brush without some form of protection. Like Chester Moore says, pray, prepare, and pack heat. Heat being something that goes bang. I have a 9mm that I carry all the time when I'm not in the house. But in the brush, I carry a 1911. Slow and fat wins that race. There are feral hogs all over the country that will see you not as a possible threat, but as their next meal. You won't look so cool missing one leg because you chose to feed the hogs instead of shoot them. There are also two-legged monsters that aren't actually cryptids. People who will kill you for the fun of it. They might decide they want your shoes or your backpack, or they just don't think you should be alive. If you meet somebody on the trail that's a bit too inquisitive about where you're going or who you might be with, just be polite, but make hasty way away from them. If you are packing heat, it had better not be in your backpack or unloaded. Waving an unloaded pistol is silly. Waving a loaded pistol is silly as well, but at least it's not empty. If you do carry a pistol, you need to have practiced using it. We used to go to the range every quarter. For 26 and a half years, I've been to the range probably several hundred times because I was also with the SRT. I still try to get a few practice days in when I can, but that ain't cheap anymore. The government doesn't pay me to shoot, so I have to pay for it myself. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, tell other people they should be listening to Strange Things with Chris James. If you don't like the show, why are you still listening? Till next Saturday, this is me.
Are you coming to the tree where there's strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.